Piers Morgan interview with Captain Steve. Welcome to Cleared for Stream live on Twitch, and also this will be uploaded onto YouTube. Welcome anyone that's new to this channel. Please subscribe, like, and leave your comments in the comment section. Let's have this discussion. Just springboarding from the previous video, the key aspects of the video that we talked about, one being the fuel cutoff, and secondly also diving into mental health in aviation and in pilots. So yeah, we'll just continue the video and see what is said further down the line, and I'll give some comments on that.
And other people point to the fact that only 9
with my fellow pilots is always, hey, how you doing? And I ask them that sincerely. And if I get the, fine, I dig a little deeper. I go, everything okay at home? You ready to fly today? And if I get a smile and a thumbs up, yeah, then we're great. Every once in a while, somebody says, are you serious about that question? I say, yeah, I'm very serious about it. They go, well, I'm okay to go flying today, but if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind somebody to talk to. So that's an important conversation for pilots to be having with fellow pilots.
Yeah. The Indian Commercial Pilots Association, ICPA, said the crew acted in line with their training and responsibilities under challenging conditions, and the pilots shouldn't be vilified based on conjecture. To casually suggest pilot suicide without verified evidence is a gross violation of ethical reporting and a disservice to the dignity of the profession. And other people point to the fact that only 19 people on the ground were killed, which they say suggests the pilots had heroically diverted the plane, as they were lauded with doing for a while, to avoid residential population. If this was deliberate, goes the argument, then why would that happen? I guess the answer to that could be, well, the co-pilot might have engineered that if he felt that the pilot had gone rogue and done something nefarious. In the end, Captain Steve, you put it all together. To me, I'm not an expert, you are, but to me it stretches credulity to think that a pilot of that experience, and the co-pilot was very experienced too, they had a lot of hours flying, that one of them would suddenly, for no explicable reason whatsoever, do something which would inevitably cause that plane.
Watch carefully.
To crash. Unless it was a deliberate act. I mean, how could that happen accidentally? I mean, many passengers, I fly all the time. My immediate thought was, well, if it's not deliberate, how on earth can pilots just crash a plane like that by accident, just by flicking a switch?
Right. Well, the mathematics behind it is it's 2.5 billion to 1. A dual engine flameout right after takeoff in a 787. So anything we talk about with this incident falls into that category of 2.5 billion to 1. So everything just seems unbelievable. And even a pilot reaching over and cutting off the fuel control switches, whether it was intentional or a mistake, both of those fall into the category of pilot error. We do know that the switches were placed to cut off, and 10 seconds later they were placed back to run. Remembering now that there's 2 pilots up in that cockpit, if one did it, the other probably was the one that undid it.
Yeah.
But they only had a 60-second flight, and they didn't have a lot of lift over those wings. So if the one pilot tried to steer away from a larger building and into a smaller building, that was about as good as it was going to get on a short flight like that. But again, if the one person did it, let's not say it was intentional. Let's say it was unintentional. And the other person realized it, and they did place them back to run. They tried to get those engines running again. Clearly, if I had 30 seconds left in that flight, I would do what I could with that short time span to get it pointed someplace where it caused the least loss of life.
But could you ever imagine doing that yourself accidentally?
No.
Do you think any experienced pilot would have the same answer?
Well, I said this in my last video on my channel. I said there is no universe where there's any procedure ever in the history of commercial flight where you place both fuel control switches to cut off, leave them there for 10 seconds, right after rotate. There is just not a scenario that fits into. And this, according to the report, that's what happened. There is a dual engine flameout procedure where you take both switches and place them to cutoff and then immediately back to run to restart the engines. That's done within a second of each other. There's no procedure where you leave them there for 10 seconds and then put them back into the run position. There just isn't.
Could the computer, which you've already said automatically deployed the rat, could the computer have malfunctioned and actually done the switches, or is that not physically possible?
Well, anything is possible, but according to the report now, remember, there's lots of eyeballs on that report. There was Boeing, the NTSB, the FAA, the AAIB, the Canadians were involved. Lots of people had input into that report. According to that report, the physical switches were placed to cutoff. Now, they do that in conjunction with the cockpit voice recorder. The voice part of the CVR is what throws us off. We think it's only recording the voices. Any sound in that cockpit is recorded. So the flight data recorder is going to show that the engines were cut off at the switch. You're also going to hear on the cockpit voice recorder the click, click of that motion. So they're putting those two things together to say they were physically placed to cut off. And then 10 seconds later, they were placed back to run. I don't think this was an electrical glitch. They would have said that in the report if it was. Is it possible it could have been? Yeah, but they didn't say that in the report. So I'm just sticking with what they've reported to us at this point.
One passenger survived, Vish Ramesh, who lives in the UK. Already, as happens with every story like this, conspiracy theorists have started up saying it's impossible that one person could survive. I think that's exactly what happened. What's your view of all the conspiracy theories raging?
Well, probably the better way to put it is it's improbable, but it's not impossible, clearly, because he's got a ticket to prove where he was. He was seated in front of what's called the wing spar, and that's the heaviest, hardest part of the aircraft. So at the leading edge of both wings where they attach to the fuselage, there's basically a steel girder underneath that holds those two together. I think he was in the perfect spot for that. That steel girder took most of the impact. He was right next to the exit door, which burst open. He looked like a pretty strong strapping guy. Yeah. That was helpful. And at that point, when the impact and they came to a stop, I'm surprised, the fireball or the heat didn't get to him. But if that door was open and he had the presence of mind, obviously, to jump out and flee, he looked like he did have a few burns on him. But that would be the only way to explain what happened, is he was the one in, 300 people that walked away from that thing.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Incredible part of the story. There seem to have been a number of plane-related incidents, crashes, and so on in the last couple of years. Is it a reality that more are happening than, say, in the previous decade or 2 decades, or not?
Well, I think aviation in general has become much safer in the last 15 years. I mean, you haven't heard of any major crashes until just kind of this year. The pandemic kind of masked it a little bit because flying really dropped off. And so there was basically half as many airplanes in the air. So there's going to be half as many mishaps. And then once one happens, it gets into the news cycle and we're a little bit more conscious about it. Clearly, something as large as Air India 171 is a catastrophic tragedy. And that's going to get a lot of attention around the planet. But if you look back over the last 15, basically to 20 years, it's still the safest way to travel. There have been very, very few incidents with loss of life.
People say, look, with AI, isn't the way to avoid this kind of thing that AI just controls takeoff and landing, and if not all the flying, you just have humans there in case there's a catastrophic failure by AI?
Piers, do you want to get in an airplane that doesn't have a pilot in it?
Well, you know what? Okay, here's my answer. So I was in Los Angeles a few months ago, and they had Waymo, which is not the Musk one, but it's driverless cabs. And I used one for a week. And the first time I got in it, it was weird as hell. So I got in with some of my family, and we were all like, it's freaking out. It's just so weird to be in a driverless car around Beverly Hills. So it didn't go out onto main big thoroughfares. It wasn't on the 405 freeway or anything. It just stayed in Beverly Hills. But it drove around at a reasonable click. It felt increasingly safe the more we used it. The sensors were very good. And Elon Musk explained it to me when I talked to him about it, about his own ones that Tesla are rolling out, that there's probably it's going to be 6 times as safe statistically as getting into a regular cab. So it's not like there won't be accidents, and it's not like people won't die, or that, you know, 1 or 2 of these things isn't going to go rogue or whatever, but that your chances of suffering an accident or dying in a driverless cab are likely to be 6 times safer than if you were in one driven by humans. So if you apply that logic to a plane.
Yeah, I really want to know what everyone thinks about that topic. AI planes, really? Is that possible? Really? At that height? That many people? Maybe small aircrafts, yeah, but the big ones, like actual like long haul flights. Yeah. Have a say of what you think about that in the comment section.
Yeah, I mean, maybe why not? Maybe actually the time to do it is when more and more people start using the driverless cabs and they realize it's safer than human-driven cabs.
I think in the long run, there may be some validity to that. I think the general public's not going to be comfortable getting in an airplane without a pilot. Here's why. When you get on an airplane, you don't look for what the gender of the pilot is or the color of their skin. You're looking for this, a little bit of gray hair. And that, I don't think you could ever program that for AI to fully comprehend the experience, the maturity, the judgment of that 30, 40-year pilot up in the front is what it really reassures me when I get on an airplane. Now, in the future, there may be generations after us that are much more comfortable with the technology, and they might be up for that sort of thing. Not me. I want to see a little bit of gray hair when I get on the airplane.
I mean, AI wouldn't suffer mental health episodes or get depressed if that is indeed what happened here.
I can't argue with that. But AI also can't cover everything else. Now, I think you alluded to maybe a combination of, AI is helping to fly the airplane and there's a pilot on board. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Honestly, 95% of what I do in the airplane is I just monitor the systems on the airplane. I'm there in case something goes wrong, and of course, takeoff and landing. Not every airport can the airplane land itself. Will the technology evolve someday for all that to happen? Yeah, I think it will, but I don't know that translates into the general public being comfortable with that. Maybe my kids' will. Just count me out.
Steve, it'd be fascinating talking to you. Just finally, do you believe we will get to the bottom of what happened to this plane?
That's a great question. If I had 2 questions to ask, I would ask this. I'd ask, number one, whoever led this investigation, I'd want to see them behind a microphone and in front of a camera. That hasn't happened yet, and that's bothering me with this. And I would like to see them answer questions, because this report honestly leaves more questions than answers. But the first question I would ask is, do you think it's possible that those fuel control switches, both of them, 2, went from run to cutoff without a human hand moving them to that position? That's the first question I'd want to get answered. And the second would be, why did you release the report at 11:59 p.m. at night just by hitting a button and not getting in front of a microphone? They need to get in front of a microphone and answer some of these questions, and they haven't up to this point.
I would add a third question, which is, if the answer to the first one is yes, then I would want to know, is it at all possible or probable that a pilot of the experience of the pilots you had on board did that accidentally? In other words, if it is established that it was a human hand that turned those switches off, and as you said, the data will probably establish that. Once you get to that point, then the question comes, was it deliberate or accidental? And I just cannot believe that a pilot with the kind of experience we're talking about would do that accidentally, knowing the consequences of that action. It just, especially on takeoff, it's just like when you're at your most alert, you would imagine. And there was no record, there were breathalyzers, there was no alcohol in the system or anything like that. So you got clear-headed people who are doing completely inexplicable things if that is what happened.
All of that is true, and it leads us to the most obvious conclusion, which is unthinkable.
It is unthinkable and very concerning, I think, for everyone who flies, because actually it's the one thing that you have no control over. You know, you can put pressure on airlines to make the aircraft as safe as possible.
Well, that was really a lot of detail given in this discussion. And my conclusion to this, at the end of the day, it's not always a single point of failure. I'd assume it's a chain of things: design flaws, miscommunication, procedural errors, and timing. And when you're in the air, timing is everything. So yeah, watching this as an aerospace engineering student, it's a tough reminder of how attention to detail is important in these critical systems. And training needs to be amped up, focusing on these critical situations like the Air India 171 crash, not just in theory but in split-second decisions. So I'd like everyone that's watching me on YouTube to tune in to my live Twitch streams at MJ Dimes 17. And on YouTube, as you've found me here. And yeah, give me a follow on my Instagram, which I'll leave in the description below. As we get to learn more about the aviation industry, we'll deep dive into more things aside from this popular thing that's going on, the breakdown of what happened of that crash. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.